This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Kevin Tucker and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic! What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is June 12th, 2025. Jonathan Osborne here, as always, joined by my co-host Kevin Tucker. Kevin, what's going on, man? How are you?
What up, man? Doing really well. We just got done talking with Josh Cohen. That dude is just a wealth of basketball knowledge. Like, it's crazy. Blows my mind every year, so I'm excited for those listening and watching to get to experience that and hear his thoughts on this Magic team and thoughts on the draft and everything in between.
Every time we talk to Dan Savage, and if Josh gets brought up, Dan always reiterates that no one watches more basketball than Josh Cohen. And I playfully asked him that during the beginning of the interview, like, hey, is it true that you watch more basketball than everyone or anyone? And he deflected, obviously, because he's a respectful, humble guy. But when you hear him talk, it's like, no, this guy, he's definitely in like the 99th percentile, I would venture to guess. So, but yeah, great talking with Josh Cohen. Myself, we don't get to watch a ton of college basketball throughout the year. So Josh is always a big help in that regard. And now, as we are recording this Wednesday night, we're 2 weeks out from the draft. So starting to ramp up the pre-draft coverage here. And I don't know about you. I don't really expect the Magic to use both picks, maybe one and trade the other. They may trade both before or at the draft. Only time will tell there. But it's still good to know like what the possibilities are and what players, may be available, and all that kind of stuff is really fun to talk about. So stay tuned for our conversation with Josh Cohen. And Kev, we've heard some rumblings about this, but got a little bit more confirmation on this that the Magic or Kia Center more generally is undergoing some AV upgrades. New video board above center court, new like ribbon LEDs, video boards in the corners. The ozone is getting some upgrades as well. Sounds like we're getting some speaker upgrades too. So the Magic are going to have a new look this season, and so is Kia Center, in the bowl area. So looking forward to that. Definitely a needed upgrade, especially the video board, I think.
Yeah, what's going to be very interesting is the video board is going to have our current video board, very tall. At the time, it was the tallest in the league. I don't know if it still is, but it's very vertical, right? And it's got all the different segments in it. And so but this new board is going to be more, horizontal, landscape mode, if you will, like if you're thinking about your phone, right? So that's going to be a new experience for Magic fans this year. What I really, really love is they have the boards on the underside of the LED, the center hang as well. So that those that are on the, the really nice seats can actually look up and see, which you and we're there all the time, in those seats. Just kidding. I've never sat there in my life. But I do like the fact that they can look up and see what's happening there. That'll be cool. And then, those corner screens are interesting. The ozone screen is interesting. But then, like you said, new PA, which I think is really important. Sound's going to be better. Some like infrastructure stuff behind the scenes as well. So all that's very exciting and long overdue, and it's kind of cool. All these things happening at once. Kia Center, new look, new experience. Magic rebrand, new look, new experience. We just need the rest of the entertainment complex to get figured out, and then we'll be cooking.
There's also a note of banner reconfiguration, so I'm interested to see what that is going to look like as well. This isn't new news because I think it was close to a year ago, maybe even more than that, where like the city of Orlando announced that there was like a certain allocation to Kia Center and I think Camping World Stadium as well, for upgrades to the facility. So we knew that this was coming, but I think it's just really cool that all of this is happening at the same time. And they're also making changes to a new word that I learned today, which is vomitory, which doesn't sound pleasant whatsoever, but as you have explained to me, it's not as bad as what it sounds like.
No, it's just the little tunnels you walk through to get into the actual bowl. So like as you're walking, into Kia Center, whether you're upper bowl, lower bowl, you walk probably up some steps and then go through like concrete, and then you're in the room. That's a vomitory, just that little passageway. But there's gonna be little screens above each vomitory. yeah, that kind of stuff is kind of
I
interesting.
just a petition to change the name of that.
Okay.
Like the other thing that is used sometimes in sports that always just feels really weird to me. Like, oh, he got through there unmolested. It's like, well, yeah, I hope so. You know,
I've never heard that
you've
in my
never
life.
heard that before.
No.
I'm going to find a sports clip and I will send it to you tonight.
Oh.
I have heard that at least a handful of times in my life, in my adult life oh, never mind. That almost took a really dark turn. But
You're
yes,
family
that is
friendly,
a term
Jonathan.
that I have heard during a sports broadcast. And every time I hear it, I'm like, could you pick any other word?
I'm just going to take your word for it. I've got nothing else to say. Never heard that. Hope I never hear it. But yeah. So anyway, new upgrades, Kia Center. It's going to be great. Yeah.
Looking forward to that very much. Okay. This is going to be the most awkward segue of all time, but let's go ahead and get into our interview with Josh Cohen. All right, Orlando Magic fans, we are now joined by a very special guest, digital news manager working for OrlandoMagic.com, our good friend Josh Cohen. Josh, Dan Savage once said that no one on the planet watches more basketball than Josh Cohen. In your estimation, is that correct?
I'm sure there's many people that watch a lot of basketball, so I'm not going to suggest that I'm that guy. I like to think that I watch a lot, but then again, I'm not necessarily comparing myself to other people, so I have no idea out there in the world who's watching what, but I try to consume as much as I can to gather as much information as I can. So from that perspective, I appreciate the compliment and the praise that Dan has given me with that, but I have no comment because I really don't know. I'm sure there's many people out there that are watching tons and tons of basketball as well.
Yeah, I know that as we go through this interview, those that are watching at home or listening at home, they'll get a little bit of an understanding of the amount of basketball that you watch. But Josh, we just saw you a couple weeks ago now. I guess it's been a little over a week now at the big rebrand event, which was a lot of fun for us. Before we start talking basketball, I'm curious your thoughts about the new look for the Magic as we head into this next season.
Yeah, an awesome new look. I always like clean and fresh, and I think the logo and new uniforms definitely present that. What I find fascinating about these logo and uniform unveils, it doesn't matter whether you pay attention to the Magic, the NBA, basketball, sports. It seems like people from all walks of life pay attention to how organizations or teams brand themselves. So it was interesting to see just the number of comments and how many eyes were on the unveiling, even people who wouldn't otherwise pay attention to the Magic or basketball in general. And that fascinates me a lot. And I guess I thought more about that because there are things that I may not be interested in. But if they were to come out with a new logo, like if a fast food restaurant came out with a new logo, I'm going to be curious. I'm going to like pay attention to that. And I may never eat there, right? Like, but for some reason, it like intrigues me just to see how companies represent themselves and what they're presenting to the public, regardless of whether you're interested in the product or not. But yeah, it's a great look. I'm excited for what's upcoming. And I think especially where the Magic are right now from a basketball perspective, it makes complete sense to have a new presentation. And I feel like when we look back at this era, we're going to be able to align this current make of the team with this logo and these uniforms. So I think that's really cool.
Josh, that's really a perfect segue leading into my next question. We have you on the show about this time each year, and I think it was Paolo's rookie season, so about 2 years ago after the end of that, we had you on and we were talking about the NBA and sort of the shift in terms of like title contenders having like multiple playmaking and like the jumbo wing kind of playmaking archetype. And one of the first sort of comparisons that we drew were like Paolo and Franz to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, them, finally winning the title last year. Just wanted to get your assessment of, I guess, Paolo and Franz's growth and how they've progressed in those roles after year 3 and year 4 already.
Yeah, I mean, you alluded to essentially the jumbo size playmaking, which I do think is what makes Paolo and Franz so unique and special. Now, this past year, because the team didn't shoot the 3 ball well, we weren't able to see the numbers necessarily translate to them being dynamic playmakers. But based on presentation, based on aesthetics, And based on some of those advanced metrics, they actually performed extremely well as playmakers. So them getting into the paint as often as they do draws in a lot of the defense. And the team as a whole had so many great 3-point looks. Now, they weren't able to knock a lot of them down, as we know, ranking last in 3-point percentage, but the quality looks were there. Early in the season, and this is when Paolo was out with his injury, but when Franz was running the show, the Magic were top 5 in shot quality. Second Spectrum particularly has a stat. It's a QSQ stat, which essentially measures shot quality. And Orlando was top 5 during that time. Now, that was also when the Magic went 13-2 during that stretch without Paolo. They were really, essentially playing very cohesive. But I think the biggest thing was they were generating quality looks off of Franz's essentially playmaking, his creation, his combination of footwork, his ability to get downhill and use his instincts and vision to find teammates either, roaming to the basket, cutting inside, maybe on the perimeter. So it was an interesting setup at that particular time of the season. And I really think Franz was able to display his growth as that jumbo-sized playmaker during that particular period of time. And then I thought in the last month of the year, Paolo really started to dominate, largely because he was able to recognize where his teammates were at a high level, whether he's able to take his guy into the post, which he's done incredibly well, especially when he came back from the injury. I thought that he has an ability to back so many of his defenders down with his size and strength to go along with some of his finesse. And I think he's so cerebral that he recognizes who around him is open. And again, you got to trust your teammates to try to knock down shots. Unfortunately, the Magic didn't knock down enough of them, clearly, especially in that Boston series. But I think we're seeing what they're capable of from a playmaking standpoint. And we know what their weaknesses are or things that they have to improve. We know Franz, from a 3-point shooting standpoint, needs to get better. But what I think is interesting about Franz's shooting is that his step back 3-point shooting has improved significantly. We saw it in the Olympics last year. It was improving during the first half of the year before he got hurt. We saw it improving. So when he plays with Paolo, he's not going to have as many of those types of shots because the ball isn't going to be in his hands as much with Paolo on the floor with him. So his spot up shooting becomes more critical because he's going to have a lot of looks off those kickouts when Paolo gets into the paint. But every other area of Franz's game, both sides of the floor, is elite. I mean, I felt before his injury in early December that he was playing like a top 5 player in the league. I thought he should have been in MVP conversations. He was obviously going to be an all-star if he didn't get hurt. There's not much he doesn't do well at this point, except for the shooting, and the perimeter shooting specifically, because now he's added in a little bit of a mid-range shot. He's got the floater working. His floater percentage improved tremendously this past year compared to his first 3 years. So I'm in awe of his game. And I think there's a good chance we're going to see him take another step next year, especially if the shooting makes some progress. And with Paolo, his efficiency still needs to get better. I mean, clearly, mid-range shooting is something that he does a lot of. And there's a debate out there, continues to be a debate, even though Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is proving that you can live in the mid-range and dominate. But can he become a little bit more reliable as a mid-range shooter when he has to settle for those shots? But I think we're going to continue to see him get downhill and draw drawing fouls is clearly his number one strength. I think that's pretty obvious. And he did that at an extremely high level toward the last month and a half of the year once he got his conditioning right. And his free throw shooting was improving with that as the season went along. And there's just a lot to love about, the way he plays the game to go along with his work ethic. And you have to figure those two together. It bodes really well for him and playing alongside Franz.
You kind of alluded to this, Josh, with what you were just talking about, but one of the silver linings, I think, for Magic fans, if you could find some amidst all the injuries from this season, was that stretch when Franz was kind of forced to be the guy while Paolo was out, right? Between that section of the season and then obviously seeing later in the season, Jonathan and I were just talking before we got on with you. It's hard to believe we're going into year 5 of Franz. Like, time is flying. It's crazy. And the fact that we sit here with you every offseason at this time and talk about it, as we enter year 5 Franz, year 4 Paolo, based on what we saw this past season, has your idea of their ceilings changed at all? Like, based on what we saw this year, is it about the same what you thought last season, or is it higher? Is it lower? What does your long-term outlook for those guys look like now?
I think a lot of it will depend on who else is on the team, who they're playing around. Obviously, if you're bringing the same team back, you would expect a lot of the dynamics to be similar and they'll be in similar roles. Now, obviously, the roster can change and there'll be different players that they have to align with, which could change just the functionality of the team and the way that they play. And that's always the one thing that we always have to keep in mind when it comes to roster construction is that you want to make sure you're maximizing the talent that you have, and you got to make sure you understand what your personnel can do. So with the current roster, the ball is in their hands almost every possession. Right? Because the Magic don't really have a true point guard, that allows them to kind of be very diverse in how they play. And that experience alone, regardless of who joins the team down the road, I think benefits them greatly. I thought in this past year, Paolo was more of a hub on offense as opposed to the guy always bringing the ball up. He did that a lot more the prior year. But no matter what, he's still the primary creator when he's on the floor. Obviously, Franz would be the secondary option if there's a double team on Paolo or if there's a load on him where you have an amazing defender on Paolo and Franz has an easier matchup. And, like, for example, like in the playoff series against Boston, I thought every time they got Porzingis in the switch, Franz just completely ate him up. Now, we know Porzingis was dealing with a health issue, but, Porzingis is not necessarily known for his switchability and guarding on the perimeter. So Franz was able to really dominate that matchup when those opportunities arose. And then Paolo was able to take advantage of all the size mismatches, especially with Jrue Holiday out. And that was key for him. In the first game, it was tough for Paolo to get into a rhythm because Jrue is such a good defender, especially against larger players. But if he can back down, Peyton Pritchard or even Derek White, even though Derek White's a really good defender, that clearly gives Paolo an advantage. And I thought Paolo, both of them are really good at recognizing when they have a mismatch. And I thought the Magic and the coaching staff did a great job of recognizing that as well and seizing those opportunities, which allowed Paolo and Franz to do so well. So there's still plenty of room for them to grow, as I mentioned before. But I'm curious to see what the functionality of the team will be going forward, and that's how we'll know what style of play they'll both be. And, I think with Franz, it's interesting because what we know about Franz is that he's more adaptable. And when Paolo was out, he had to be the primary creator. The ball was in his hands an exorbitant amount of time. So he was the initiator. He orchestrated the offense, and he did it tremendously well, as we touched on earlier. When the ball is not in his hands, there's two dimensions of his game that still thrive, and that one of them is cutting. People forget that both him and Mo Wagner are two of the best cutters in the league. It's just that Franz doesn't have to do it as much because he's more of a creator in most situations while Mo's off the ball and moving without the ball. So that's one thing about Franz that I think gets lost a little bit about how good he is, because very few all-star level players cut. They're just not what they normally do. That's more of a role player job. So Franz does role player things that you don't normally see from someone of his caliber. And that's what makes him, I think, really unique. Like, there's not many guys who can do as many good things as Franz. I think the other thing that I was going to mention that he does really well that really doesn't get noticed at all is that he can actually be the screener in pick and roll situations. So if Paolo has the ball, Franz has done a really good job as the screener, and then either he doesn't roll that much, but when he pops, he does a good job getting to a spot to get open. The question is, can he knock down the three? And Paolo's a good screener too. So if Franz has the ball in pick and roll, Paolo could be the screener, and Paolo's a really good roller. So that's something that maybe we could see more of down the road, depending, again, who else is on the roster. But that's why I listen, we'll see how it all plays out with roster construction. But, you have to, I think we always have to remember that to maximize a player's abilities, you got to make sure you have the right players around them so that they can do the things that they do really, really well. Otherwise, players will just have to keep adapting. And we see it time and time again. Guys have done it and they've done it well. So we'll just see how things go as time moves forward.
And now for a word from our friends over at Jam Hot Chicken. They are bringing jams, culture, and hot chicken to the heart of Winter Park. Jam Hot Chicken is a Nashville and LA inspired hot chicken shack locally owned and operated in Winter Park, Florida, located over there at 400 West New England Avenue, Suite 13 in Hannibal Square. Be sure to follow them at Jam Hot Chicken on all social media. Check them out over at jamhotchickenfl.com. You can find their menu, online ordering, even music playlists, and all things Jam Hot. Don't forget, whether you're there to get the Sando, you're there to get the box, which is Kevin and mine's personal favorite. Pro tip, have them add the cheddar Bob mac and cheese to that. Order an extra side of pickles to throw that in there and just mix it all up and go to town. Really one of the best things, not only in Central Florida, in Orlando, but really in the world that you can eat. Always love the box. And now for the summer, they also have the 6-man, which is their chicken wrap, which is their tenders, their slaw, house-made ranch in the wrap. Always hits. And then they also have watermelon slushies this time of year as well. So if you're there, be sure to stop in, get some of that while you're in Winter Park. They're also available now on Uber Eats. So if you want local delivery, if you're in the area, don't want to leave the house, you can get that delivered straight to your door. Once again, shout out to our friends over at Jam Hot Chicken. Diehard Magic fans, if you're in the area, stop by, let them know that we sent you.
It's also time to shout out some of our patrons who went to patreon.com/The6Man and signed up to join. Today, we're going to shout out Diehard from ATL, Jay, Jared Cooper, Nick from the Cloud, and Dalek Lopez. Those are 5 of our Hall of Fame and Elite tier patrons. At patreon.com/The6Man, we have several different tiers to choose from. You can find the one that best fits your situation. And then, sign on up. We also shout out brand new patrons whenever we have them each and every episode. This time we get to shout out Jonathan Fisher. So shout out to Jonathan. Jonathan Osborne likes that name. Yeah, I figured you would. Shout out Jonathan Fisher. Thanks for joining the Patreon. Again, that's patreon.com/The6Man. And that's where you can financially support what we're doing here at the 6-Man Show. So not just, these episodes, the podcast episodes, but also this whole idea of raising up this Orlando Magic fan community to bring the team the fan base that we think they deserve. And so if you believe in that mission and you want to join us in it, you can go to patreon.com/The6Man. And now let's get back to the episode. Josh, definitely the biggest mystery for Magic fans this past season, you talked about it, was the shooting. I want to hear from you as someone who has watched a lot of basketball, and I really trust your basketball opinion. What in the world, where did that come from? We had guys across the board shooting career lows, despite, like you mentioned, to my eye, a lot of really, really good shots. Have you ever seen anything like it? And is there anything that you can find that you can attribute just across the board poor shooting from the Magic last season?
Not really, honestly. It was really odd. I mean, we knew going into the year that shooting was probably their largest weakness anyway, but not to this extent. I think the most significant stat, not just of the Magic, but the entire NBA, really. The Magic went 20-5 when they shot at least 36% from 3. That's league average. 36% is just league average. There's nothing special about it. There's nothing unique about it. But that was the season's league average. When they shot 36%, they went 20-5. They should have been 21-5. This is sidebar note. The last regular season game against Boston, when the game was over, the box score had them as above 36%. So it would have been 21-5. The next day, and it was, I think it was Jett Howard. He took a last second 3, at the buzzer when the game was already decided, and he missed it. And I guess they tallied that after the fact. So the following day, it went below 36%. So that's why it's 20-5 and not 21-5 for what that's worth. Anyways, they were one of only 5 teams to win 80% of their games when shooting at least 36% from 3. So that's another component. And I'm not trying to dodge the question as to why they didn't shoot well. I'm sure there are potential reasons, just maybe mental. You could always, I know Jonathan Isaac made a mention of that after the season, that it started to get mental in his head, maybe the entire team's head. And I'm sure that happens. I think we've all played basketball. When shots aren't falling, sometimes it really does kind of annoy you and get to the point where it's you get aggravated and it makes it harder to make them. But, I feel because they had such a good record when they shot 36%, it just suggests that they do everything else at least they at least keep their heads above water in every other category. We know they're elite on defense in almost every area, but even on offense, they're really good in a lot of areas, or they were really good in a lot of areas. So logic would suggest that if you just improve the 3-point shooting a little bit, they went 41-41 with injuries and bad shooting, really bad shooting, like historically bad shooting. So just based on like simple rationale, if you raise that to 33%, which is 3% lower than league average, they probably would have won 50 games, right? I mean, just logically. So that also kind of gives me a lot of confidence. Again, we don't know what the roster is exactly going to look like, but even if it was the same roster, well, if you just shoot a little bit better from three, just basic logic, you're almost inevitably going to climb up in the standings, especially in the East. I mean, we know about the whole, the Tatum situation in Boston and, who knows with other teams. But I mean, just that alone, I think is promising in my head that like, you can't go get any worse, right? Like they're going to get better from a shooting standpoint in some way, you would think, logically.
Speaking of shooting and perhaps how to fix or remedy some of the offense, the Magic do have an opportunity here in 2 weeks as we record this with the NBA draft coming up and want to shift the conversation more towards the draft and some of the prospects. Shooting, obviously, probably some additional playmaking would help this team and go a long way as well. And, taking some of the burden off of Paolo and Franz. In those two areas, playmaking, shooting, who are, in your opinion, some of the best prospects in this draft that could fill those types of needs for a team?
I'm really intrigued by a lot of the international guys in this draft, and we might see as many as, I think it's 6 French players. One of them played at Stanford, Maxime Reynaud. He's a center, but he does stretch the floor. He's more of like a drop-down center who could block some shots, and then he'll stretch the floor on offense a little bit. So you could touch on him as far, he was a 20-10 guy at Stanford his senior year, but he's on the older side because he played 4 years in college. So I really like the international players. From a playmaking standpoint, Nolan Traore, he's going to be one of the younger players in this draft. And you talk about a true point guard, he might be the best one in this class based on what I've seen from the overseas games. Now, obviously, it's hard to know what will translate, but he's got excellent vision, really poised player, very cerebral. But the questions there is shooting, which is a problem. Is he assertive enough to be a primary creator and get to the basket and score on his own? That still remains to be seen. But a lot of people, when it comes to the playmaking stuff, everybody's really excited about either Yegor Demin out of BYU, who's originally from Russia, and then you have Kasparas Jakučiūnas out of Illinois, who's originally from Lithuania. Both those guys had professional experience in Spain before coming to college. These are intriguing guys, but in the case of Demin, he was really bad from a shooting standpoint. He only averaged 10 points a game at BYU, not an assertive, not an aggressive player, but yet incredibly flashy, pretty dazzling in his passing skills. A lot of people have wondered if and the other thing I should mention, most important about Demin, is that he's 6'8", 6'9". So if he is going to be a true point guard in the NBA, which is one of the big debates and probably going to determine whether he's a top 10 pick or a top 20 pick, that's a very intriguing player. 6'8", 6'9", point guard, not too many of those guys. But does he have enough of offensive firepower to really be considered a guy that you want to give the ball to and have him lead your offense? Because can he score? I mean, that's the primary question with him. And also, is he good enough defensively to hold his own on that end? And then with Kasparas with Illinois, he got off to a roaring start in college. He was actually, I think some people had him in the top 5 in mock drafts in the first quarter of the year. And then he struggled midway through to the end. And his shooting wasn't as good as advertised. But a lot of people think that if he was more of just a spot-up shooter, that actually would help his numbers grow because he was primarily handling the ball a lot. They have another prospect named Will Riley, who's more of their shooting guard guy. So Kasparas was handling the ball a lot for Illinois, and he showed a lot of promise from what I saw. And he's very crafty. He's good with shot fakes. He can get his defender up in the air, draw fouls. He's about 6'6", so he's still, pretty large body for a guy who could play the 1 or the 2. But I think he only shot 31% from 3, which for a guy that was supposed to be a better shooter is low. But not many of those shots necessarily were those spot ups that maybe he'll end up doing a lot more of in the NBA. So he's a guy to keep an eye on. I'm pretty intrigued by him. They have, again, some of those other French guys, more ancillary pieces. Berenjay, who another young player, center. I know we talked about shooting and playmaking. He's not that. He's more of rim protection, screening, playing with energy. But I'm trying to think of some other guys. Oh, shooting wise, I mean, Chaz Lanier out of Tennessee, he's maybe the best shooter in this draft. I mean, just straight up off percentage. People are really excited about Cedric Howard, who didn't really play much in college because he got hurt, but he transferred from Eastern Washington to Washington State, and people were pretty excited about what he can do there, but then he gets hurt. I heard he's been doing well in workouts, so maybe there's something there, but he is projected to be a really good shooter. I don't know if it'll translate. That's what people are saying about him. There's not much tape on him, though, especially at Washington State. I mean, I guess Eastern Washington, he showed some promise there. And then I actually really like Kobe Brea, Kentucky. Now, he was a transfer from Dayton, and he shot like 43% from three at Kentucky. But again, one of the older players, because he was actually a fifth-year senior at Kentucky. He only played the 1 year with the Wildcats. But those are some guys that really pop out. People love Jace Richardson. He's small. That's the primary concern there. Only 6 foot. He measured like 6.5 without shoes at the combine. But he's got a really quick first step, excellent shooting stroke. And of course, his dad was Jason Richardson, who was an excellent shooter in his day. So he's got the pedigree. And those are some guys that pop out. But we can get into specific guys if you wanted. But those are some guys that really caught my attention, just going through it real quick.
Yeah, and Jason Richardson, former Orlando Magic player as well. Had some pretty fun moments in his short stint in Orlando. I feel like the Magic are really at a crossroads this summer, Josh, as far as, we've talked about a lot, how they're going to not just construct the roster, but we've heard Jeff Weltman say phrases that we've never heard him say before when it comes to win now mode. Like he was saying that, in the exit interviews, just last month or whatever it was, which is very interesting. But I'm curious from your perspective, like what are some of the things that he and his team are navigating as we enter in this? There's two paths, right? We've got these 2 picks, 16 and 25, that we could use to fill some of those needs that we talked about. Or there's a whole world out there where other teams might value 16 and 25. And on the one end, rookies are cheaper than proven players and all these different things. What do you think Jeff Weltman and Anthony Parker and company are weighing as we count down these last couple of weeks to the draft?
I would say, if I'm just trying to put my thinking cap on and trying to speculate possibilities, because obviously I have no idea.
Right.
But I would say the one benefit of having 2 first-round picks that are 16 and 25 specifically in this case is that if you can identify a player that you absolutely love, like you just absolutely fall in love with them during the pre-draft process, or maybe even during the season, you fell in love with them months ago, and they're projected to go, let's say between 5 and 12 or 5 and 13, because you're probably not going to be able to move up to the top 4 with 16 and 25. Maybe you can to 5, 6, maybe add in a second rounder or a future pick or something in a trade. But if you fall in love with someone, by having 2 first-round picks, you could just move up using those 2 picks, right? I would think we've seen that before in NBA history. It's happened numerous times where teams that had the 2 picks in the first round package them together to move up. So I think that's the first thing that has to be assessed. Is there a player probably going to be picked in the late part of the lottery, middle to late lottery, we'll say in this scenario, that you just are in love with, you adore, you think could be an all-star, you think could be the best player in a draft, just someone that completely fits in with this team, with Paolo and Franz, with Jalen, whoever else. I would say that would be number one priority, right? Just completely I think if you don't do that, you've decided that, well, either no team was willing to trade with you. Okay. That's logical too. But the other reason, if you could make that trade, the reason not to do it is obviously because you didn't identify a player that you thought could be at that level. So why bother? Again, too, I think financially, 16 and 25, those players are not going to make that much early in their careers. So you're getting quality players, or you hope to get quality players on cheap contracts, which in today's NBA, I think is really vital. But yeah, so that's one component. I think the simplest thing is if you do like two guys, one at 16, one at 25, if you feel the draft is really deep, just stand pat and pick two guys and then figure out the roster from there. I know that makes it hard because you already have so many players that need playing time currently on the roster. So how would you really juggle that? That's difficult. And then obviously, if you want to go get someone who's already proven in the league, can you package the picks to get an established veteran, or package the picks with other players currently on the team to get something even greater? So, there's so many different avenues. I'm sure that could be explored, but I think like I said, going back to the top, I think the biggest thing is, do you love a player that everybody has going, like I said before, between, let's say now 5, let's say 6 or 7 to like 12 or 13. And there's some promising guys in this draft, as we all know. Maybe you try to move up, maybe. Or maybe you just, the other thing I should mention, like theoretically, let's say you pick your guy at 16, let's say, right? And then you're like, we don't need another guy. We already have too many players to work with. We have too many young players, whatever. You could always maybe take the 25th pick and trade it for a future pick. So now you have more assets to work with down the road for something larger. Maybe there's another trade down the road that you want to use that pick for. So I think it's really nice to have 2 first-round picks. Now, of course, that was the Aaron Gordon trade that generated that. But I'm sure, like, when they first made that trade, they thought about things like that. Like, obviously, that was back in 2021. But you already start thinking, like, if you have 2 picks that year, maybe by that point you can work with that in a way that makes it more advantageous. So that's what pretty much crosses my mind, I would say, at this particular juncture. But who knows? So many scenarios at play.
Josh, it seems every year that Magic fans find themselves falling in love with a particular prospect. I think that's ramped up quite a bit this year due to the fact that the Gators won the national championship, and I'm guessing you can probably guess where I'm headed with this one. What's your opinion of Walter Clayton Jr.? Like, how would you assess him as a prospect?
Yeah, he shot the ball really well. I mean, you talked or you asked earlier about shooters. He obviously deserves to be in that conversation. He clearly elevates his game in high pressure situations by helping the Gators win the championship. To me, he's a bucket getter. He's a shot creator. I don't see him as like a true point guard. Not that especially with the Magic, you may not have to be to make a big contribution. The question there is his shot selection good enough at his size to warrant making him a major rotation player, if not more? Wherever the projections have him, I've seen him mid-teens to late first round, even early second in some cases. Size, he's 6'2", so that's a little bit of a concern if you're not like a super speedy guard who can blow by everyone off the dribble. I don't really classify him like that. I think, like, if you're comparing him to like Jace Richardson, which I think many people are comparing the two just because they're supposed to be picked around the same area, Jace has a little more of a quicker first step to me. I don't know, just my eyes tell me that. But Clayton seems a lot more creative in his shot creation compared to Jace. I just wonder if he's going to run into a problem with generating his own shot against NBA defense, where he may have to take a lot of step backs. Can he get to the basket at will? Does he draw enough fouls? Now, he's a good shooter, but is he a good enough stationary shooter? Obviously, with Florida, I feel like he was able to maximize his off the ball or off the dribble creation a little bit more. I don't know if he'll be able to do that as much in the NBA, but if he's just a purely good shooter, stationary spot ups, catch and shoot, well, then that's a game changer, especially for a team like the Magic. But every team could use someone who could just stand in a corner or even the wing and knock down shots. So clearly that's an advantage if he can prove to do that consistently. And defensively, he's not known for it. I mean, but he seems to play really hard. His competitiveness is off the charts. I think that was a big reason why he was able to elevate his team in the NCAA tournament. And he made so many clutch shots that it seems like you can rely on him in pressure-packed situations. So that's pretty much my thought of him. You know, it's always a little if you're, here's one thing I would say, and this is not meant to be a knock on him or any other player that's like him, projected to be picked mid to late first round or even early second. It seems to me most of the time, if a player that is a shot creator, if that player is not projected to be top 10, it's a little dangerous to expect huge things from that player, because if you're going to be that good as a shot creator, a team is probably going to want you to be the main guy on a team. So if you come in and you have that skill set, but you're not the main guy, usually that translates into like being a spark plug off the bench. That's like kind of like a Cole Anthony in a sense, right? Like you expect him to come off, be a microwave scorer, create your own shot, not necessarily rely on anybody else, but you're not going to be the main guy in the starting group just because you have other guys to handle that responsibility. So, it varies. I mean, obviously there have been a few greats in NBA history that were picked late first round that turned out to be, lead guards or lead scorers or whatever. But it seems like most of the time the guys that get picked in the late part of the first round that end up having a huge impact are the ancillary piece guys. Like Rudy Gobert was a late first round pick because he doesn't need the ball to dominate. Obviously, he's a defensive guy. He can hang around the rim. We all know what Gobert does, but like you could plug those guys into those non-alpha roles and they can make a massive impact. And so if you're bringing a guy like Clayton in, I feel like to maximize his skills, do you have to just kind of hand the ball to him? I mean, not to say that any team will do that if they pick him in the late 20s or even early 30s. Maybe as a spot up shooter, he will still make an impact, or maybe as a microwave scorer off the bench. I don't know. That's what I would think logically.
My last question for you, Josh, about this draft class is actually not at all related to the Orlando Magic, unless the Dallas Mavericks do another mysterious trade, as we saw with Luka. But I'm curious your thoughts about Cooper Flagg. I'm someone who doesn't watch a ton of college basketball, not a ton of film, but anytime I hear, consensus number one, guaranteed number one, I start to get a little bit of like, oh, hold on, is this guy legit? Is he real? What do you think about Cooper Flagg and his promise going forward?
Yeah, talk about another competitive guy. I mean, every time you watch him, it's just like the energy he plays with alone seems to just make a massive impact. I thought at Duke, he did show a lot more shot creation than I thought he would. I thought he was completely like, he was compared to Andrei Karolinko coming out of high school, which was logical because he's like a 5-tool player, kind of dabbles in every little category, really makes a statement on the defensive end, guards multiple positions, versatile, all that. But like he did show more promise as like a guy you can hand the ball to and he can create on his own and has good vision too. So he can find other guys, as far as orchestrating the offense. He's great running the floor. I mean, he does a lot of things really, really well. But again, just 1 year alone to me doesn't necessarily dictate how things will go in the NBA. And I think he'll be really good, but will he be like a 30-point per game scorer? And I don't even know if in Dallas, if they pick him, we assume they will, if he'll even be able to be given that opportunity considering the other guys they have on the team. Although with Kyrie out, maybe there will be more of an avenue for that. But with Anthony Davis, I mean, he's going to be the main hub offensively. It's interesting because like the fact that Dallas won the lottery and obviously you would think they're going to take him, like, does it change his role? Because every other team in the lottery, you figured like you're handing the keys to the guy. You're going to give him the ball. Like you got to give him a chance to be that guy. Now I've seen the Scottie Pippen comparison, which I think is pretty good. I think Pippen had a little better like court vision overall. I mean, Pippen's arguably the best after LeBron, the best point forward maybe of all time, just based on like vision and size and all that. Maybe the defense is comparable. But my personal feeling is I think he's going to be really, really good, which I think most people do. Will he be generational? Maybe. I don't know. I feel torn about it because you could see the competitiveness alone gives him an edge and he seems to be a hard worker. So maybe he'll just keep elevating and elevating and elevating. But with Dallas, maybe he won't be really given the green light to be that. I don't know. It's a tricky situation because number one picks don't usually go to teams that are so like veteran heavy. So that's kind of my feeling on him right now. But I could see him clearly being a perennial all-star at minimum.
Josh Cohen, always appreciate the time, especially appreciate your insight around the Magic and the draft. Before we let you go here, please just let our listeners and our viewers know where they can find your work.
Yeah, so articles are on OrlandoMagic.com, Twitter/X, whatever we call it these days, Josh_Cohen_NBA, and it's the same on YouTube. So those are the primary ways you can find me.
I'm glad you brought up the YouTube, because if you didn't, I was going to. So not only like Orlando Magic coverage, like there's a whole Glenn Robinson video that Josh dropped a few months back. So just NBA and basketball coverage in general. Be sure to check out the YouTube, follow him on Twitter, and obviously follow all of his work there on OrlandoMagic.com. Josh, once again, we just really appreciate you taking the time. Always love your help this time of year, as we don't watch a ton of college basketball throughout the year. So getting your insight is always super helpful and valuable for us. And again, appreciate the time.
I appreciate it, guys. Thanks so much.
Once again, a big thank you to our friend Josh Cohen. Always a pleasure having him on the show. And that dude, again, just watches more basketball than anybody. Just appreciate his insight, his wealth of basketball knowledge. And yeah, I'm looking forward to this draft, Kevin. Have no idea what we're going to do. I am kind of hoping that we trade both picks. I don't know that there's a lot of room for a rookie on this team. And if using one or both of those picks can help you get an upgrade at another position, especially in terms of playmaking, shooting, any of the guys that have been rumored and we've been talking about for the past several weeks that the Magic could be targeting, I think that's the route that I would prefer the Magic to go. But we'll know in just a couple weeks here.
Yeah, again, it's so tough because there's the basketball side of it, but there's also the financial side of it, right? Like rookies are cheaper. And right now, that's really important, especially, when you talk about the contracts that the Magic are, the extensions that the Magic are embarking on this year and Paolo next year and all those things. So that's not something that can be ignored, unfortunately, in this world of the NBA. But it is what it is. But yeah, I'm excited, obviously hearing from Josh, which, by the way, he is the definition of ball. Like that is like, that could be his middle name. But we've got 2 more episodes coming up here over the next week where we're talking with more draft experts. And so we'll get some more ideas, more insight on different prospects, whether it's in the Magic's range of 16 or 25, or like Josh mentioned, there is a world in which they could package 16 and 25 and move up. And so we can get some insights on some players that are going to go a little sooner in the draft from those guys. But yeah, it's a very exciting time. And yeah, 2 weeks away, and we'll have at least a lot of these questions answered.
All right, that is going to do it for this one for Kevin Tucker. This has been Jonathan Osborne. Once again, a big thank you to Josh Cohen for joining the show. You all have been listening to The Sixth Man Show, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya.
Thanks for listening to The Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!